Well, hello and welcome. So today I'm just want to talk about emails I get from parents and requests I get for parents. Well, I'm talking to them all the time, but in this case, it's just emails because I get a particular theme of emails from parents that are basically saying, "Dr. Childress, help me." And so, okay, I will help you, all of you. I'll answer your questions. So this is an example. I just sort of cut and pasted it of what I get, and they're all variations on the theme. So it's hello, Dr. Childress. My 12-year-old daughter has said things I can't believe and was calling me names before my wife leaving. I'm dealing with the county court system and can't see my daughter. I believe my wife has a mental illness being passed on to the child, but the therapist my wife got our daughter doesn't see it. Can you help me defend myself and my daughter and then the location? Pretty typical. And here's another one. Dear Dr. Childress, I'm writing you from the location. Recently, someone shared one of your videos with me, which led me to explore your parent resources more deeply. Thank you for creating and sharing such thoughtful and accessible work. I'm a mother who's been blocked from all contact with my beautiful boys, despite enduring a 3-year court process and having court orders that allow for unsupervised time with them. Like many mothers in this situation, the experience has been profoundly traumatic. Dr. Childress, I'm searching for your diagnostic checklist for pathogenic parenting. I found it on your website a couple years ago. My case is still ongoing, and this has been a critical resource. Please show me where I can find that again. I cannot tell you how much I value your work. I have introduced it to some of the most prominent counselors in Georgia and South Carolina family court system. Thank you. Your work is incredible. I'm hoping it will help save my children. So let me answer your questions. Dr. Childress, help me. Okay, so here's the situation. You have a problem. You need to fix your problem. To fix your problem, you will need a treatment plan to fix your problem. To get a treatment plan, you will need a diagnosis of what your problem is, because diagnosis guides treatment. The treatment for cancer is different than the treatment for diabetes. So you're going to need a diagnosis of what your problem is. The diagnosis of concern in the family courts is that the allied parent, for all three of these questions and for everyone out there, the diagnosis of concern is that the allied parent has a major psychiatric disorder called a persecutory delusion, a fixed and false belief that the child is being malevolently treated in some way by the normal range parenting of the targeted parent. So if you tell me what the diagnosis is, I will tell you how to fix your problem. Is the diagnosis a persecutory delusion in the allied parent? Is the diagnosis psychological abuse of the child by the allied parent? If not, why not? So I have YouTube videos up that describe how to diagnose persecutory delusions, how to diagnose attachment pathology, how to diagnose child abuse in the family courts, and what the DSM-5 diagnosis is. I have checklists available on my website, and right here you can just cut and paste this sort of thing, and it's a simple checklist. Targeted parent abusive. Is the targeted parent abusing the child in some way, thereby creating the child's authentic attachment pathology towards this parent? If so, identify the child abuse. Or is the allied parent psychologically abusing the child by creating a shared induced persecutory delusion and false, factitious attachment pathology in the child? So there it is. Okay, that's the differential diagnosis. All three of those parents who contacted me are describing the persecutory delusion. That's what they're saying that's going on in their family. And they've been doing this for years, apparently. They're saying the courts have been going on. So what is the diagnosis? Now, notice none of them told me, I have a problem. Here is the diagnosis of the problem. They just said, I have a problem and I can't get it fixed. Well, first step in getting it fixed is to identify what that problem is. In mental health, we have things called diagnoses, DSM-5, professional level. Is it schizophrenia? Is it bipolar disorder? Major depression? ADHD? Autism? Is it a persecutory delusion? In the allied parent, because of their narcissistic borderline dark personality traits, and are they psychologically abusing the child by creating that persecutory delusion and false or factitious attachment pathology in the child? So I've even broken it down more specifically for the allied parent. Yes, no, you can give this to any mental health professional involved. You can give it to the court. Does the allied parent have an encapsulated persecutory delusion regarding the targeted parent? And does the child share this persecutory belief, a fixed and false belief that the child is being malevolently treated in some way? And there is the DSM-5 diagnostic code for that. DSM-5 297.1, delusional disorder persecutory type. Yes or no? You can ask your mental health professionals, just a simple checkbox, yes or no. You can give it to your judge, yes or no. That's what we need an answer. We need to identify what the problem is. Are you abusive, or is it the other parent who's abusive? Is it a factitious disorder? Does the child have a false or factitious attachment pathology imposed on the child by the pathological creating parenting of the allied parent? And there's your DSM-5 code for that, 300.19, factitious disorder imposed on another, that's FDIA. And so spousal abuse, we're worried about the spousal abuse of the targeted parent. Is the allied parent using the child's induced pathology, the induced persecutory delusion and false factitious attachment pathology, as a weapon of spousal, emotional, and psychological abuse of the targeted parent? Then there's your DSM-5 diagnosis code for that, 995.82, spouse or psychological, spouse or partner abuse psychological. So, you want my help? Absolutely. Tell me what the problem is at a professional level. And well, you don't diagnose pathology, so ask your mental health professionals. You're involved in the court, you're involved in 3 years of conflict. When you get contact with a mental health professional, say, what's my problem? Please identify what my problem is. Is it a persecutory delusion in the allied parent that's being induced in the child, creating a false factitious attachment pathology? Either one or both of those is child psychological abuse, and we're worried about spousal abuse as well. So you tell me what the problem is, and I'll tell you how to fix your problem. Now, so tell me how to fix what the diagnosis is. I'll tell you how to fix your problem. Now, the mental health professionals in the family court won't diagnose what the problem is. They won't identify what the problem is. They refuse. They simply refuse to do that. So you cannot fix your problem until you identify what that problem is. And you can't fix your problem until you get a diagnosis for what that problem is. And so that becomes your problem. The mental health professionals in the family courts are the worst imaginable. They are ignorant, incompetent, and unethical. That is your problem. So you think your problem is with the allied parent? No, that's a fixable thing. As soon as we identify what the problem is, that it's with them, a shared delusion, a factitious disorder, psychological child abuse, we fix it. But until we identify that they are causing the problem, we can't fix your problem. So you go for years and years in the family courts with being emotionally and psychologically abused as an ex-spouse, the spousal abuse. You watch your child's life be destroyed in the family courts and all the conflict and twisted up psychologically because the mental health people won't identify that the target or that the allied parent is creating the problem. They simply refuse to say they have a persecutory delusion. They are psychologically abusing the child. They say, no, it's a cover up. That's what it is. The mental health people are covering up the child abuse by the allied parent by refusing to diagnose what the problem is. So you think it has to do with all this other stuff? No, it's the mental health people. They're colluding and participating in covering up the child abuse of your children because they're ignorant, incompetent, unethical, and they don't care. They're financially exploiting you, basically. It's called institutional betrayal. That's your problem. Institutional betrayal trauma. It's about the one who should protect and doesn't. That's your mental health people involved. They should protect, and they're not. They refuse. They refuse to protect your children from child abuse. That's your problem. So this is a definition from Gemini about institutional betrayal. Jennifer Freud's concept of institutional betrayal refers to wrongful actions or inactions by institutions, universities, workplaces, military, in this case, the mental health system and the family courts, that harm individuals dependent upon them, such as covering up abuse or failing to respond to reports. That's what's happening. It extends betrayal trauma theory and causes significant mental health issues, often being more damaging than the initial incident. So we can fix the child abuse, we can fix the delusional disorder once we identify that that's what it is. The allied parent is creating a persecutory delusion in the child and false factitious attachment pathology. Child psychological abuse, we identify it, we fix it. But if we don't do that, if we cover up the child abuse, if we cover up the major psychiatric disorder in the allied parent, the delusional disorder, then we can't fix the problem. And it goes on for years and years and years. A child's life is destroyed and the parent's life is destroyed and everything goes awful, which is worse than the original thing if we just diagnose it and fix it. So it's the institutional betrayal that is your problem. Okay. And it's been your problem for 15 years. And you see the people come in and say, I found your pathogenic parenting checklist 3 years ago. And I've been 3 years? You haven't gotten somebody to go check for 3 years? My goodness, that's your problem. I can return a diagnosis on this pathology within 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. I've written a booklet on it. The assessment of attachment-related pathology surrounding divorce. Simple little booklet. I describe how to assess it. Okay? Easy. 4 to 6 weeks. We can solve the whole thing in 6 to 12 weeks. Absolutely. We can solve it. 6 to 12 weeks. Everything's done, fixed, and child's restored, bonded. As soon as we diagnose what that problem is. The treatment for cancer is different than the treatment for diabetes. Are we treating a delusional disorder and child abuse? Tell me. Once you tell me, we're able to treat it. This is the article, Smith and Freud, 2014, Institutional Betrayal, American Psychologist. You can see the title there, Institutional Betrayal. This is in the journal American Psychologist, which is the flagship journal of the American Psychological Association. So this is real stuff. Institutional betrayal. That's what's happening in the family courts. This right here. And this is your problem. The ones who should protect you and your child are refusing to protect you and your child, the mental health people. They are the worst imaginable. In creating and fostering a forensic custody evaluation industry in the family courts that does not diagnose what the problem is, but instead takes 6 to 9 months and $20,000 to $40,000 to recommend to the court what the custody schedule should be, without diagnosing what the problem is, who's causing the problem. By creating and fostering that system, the American Psychological Association and the state licensing boards are betraying their obligation to protect children from child abuse and parents from spousal abuse by a pathological ex-spouse and parent using the child as a spousal abuse weapon. That's your problem. This is from the only review ever conducted on these forensic custody evaluations. They've just allowed to do them, make stuff up and do them without any sort of oversight or review. The only review was ever conducted was done by the New York Blue Ribbon Commission on Forensic Custody Evaluations, conducted through legislative authority, and this is what they found. In some custody cases, because of a lack of evidence or inability of parties to pay for expensive challenges of an evaluation, defective reports can thus escape meaningful scrutiny and are often accepted by the court with potentially disastrous consequences for parents and children. This is the activity of the psychologists. I want you to understand this. What the psychologists do will result in potentially disastrous consequences for the parents and children. That should never be. We need to stop this. The psychologists should not be creating harm by what they do. And they are. They are the worst imaginable. From the New York Blue Ribbon Commission, by an 11 to 9 margin, a majority of commission members favor elimination of forensic custody evaluations entirely, arguing that these reports are biased and harmful to children, lack scientific or legal value. At worst, evaluations can be dangerous, particularly in situations of domestic violence or child abuse. What the psychologists are doing is dangerous and harmful to children. It needs to stop. Stop doing these and do a clinical diagnostic assessment for a delusional disorder in the alive parent and for psychological abuse of the child. The moment that happens, your problem is fixed. But until that happens, you have a problem because the forensic custody evaluations have captured the field and are offering you, the parents, and the court only their custody evaluation approach, and they are refusing to diagnose what the pathology is in your ex-spouse, and they are refusing to identify the psychological abuse, so then we can't fix the delusional disorder and the child abuse because they are covering it up. They are refusing to identify it. If they say, this is child abuse by the allied parent, then you take that to court and say, Your Honor, this is child abuse. We need to separate the child. We need to put this on treatment. I've got a booklet, another booklet, contingent visitation schedule. We can do this. The moment we get that child abuse diagnosis, we can go, okay, we separate the child, we put this into place, we fix your problem. Easy. You tell me what the diagnosis is. I'll tell you how to treat it. The problem is you can't tell me what the diagnosis is because the mental health people you're working with in the family courts won't diagnose. They won't identify that it's child abuse by the alive parent. They refuse. Well, then there's going to be child abuse. That's a fact. More from the New York Blue Ribbon Commission. These members reached the conclusion that the practice is beyond reform and that no amount of training for courts, forensic custody evaluators, and or other court personnel will successfully fix the bias, inequity, and conflict of interest issues that exist within the system. Absolutely, it's a conflict of interest issue. Because the moment we stop these custody evaluations, guess what happens to the custody evaluators? They're out of a job. Their little cash cow of your bank account disappears. And they actually have to fix the problem? Oh my gosh, that requires that they know stuff. And they actually treat and solve things. No, they want to be custody evaluators who just get your money and make an opinion and don't have to fix anything. They just offer opinions on what the custody schedule should be. That's so easy for $20,000 to $40,000. That's what they want to do. But if we stop the custody evaluations, then they're out of a job and they'll have to go and get a real job working with autism or ADHD or something. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So the conflict of interest is phenomenal. Okay, and that's the Association of the Family and Conciliation Courts. That's your little umbrella organization. That's the one that's got the conflict of interest. Okay, they've known this since 2022. So they've known this for 4 years. Are they stopping it? No, because that's their career. I've told the APA about the ethical violations in 6 top tier forensic custody evaluations. I told the APA, I told the AFCC, and now I've got 6 licensing board complaints in because that's what standard 1.05 says, and that's what the APA ethics committee said. They will not review until the licensing board has. Okay. Violations to 2.01 boundaries of competence, 2.04 bases of scientific knowledge, 9.01 bases of assessment, 3.04 avoiding harm. There it is. There's your ethical violations. So standard 1.05, that's mandatory for me. I've told the licensing boards, I've just discharged my duty to protect the licensing boards back with this hearing a couple months, just recently, a month or so ago. So I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm telling the agency, I'm telling everybody, but the licensing boards won't protect you because they are captured by the forensic custody evaluators, the conflict of interest. So that's your problem. So here's your problem. The mental health professionals in the family court are the worst imaginable. Absolutely the worst. They are ignorant, incompetent, unethical. What they do is harmful to children and dangerous and lacks scientific or legal value. Yet they'll take $20,000 to $40,000 from you to offer their opinion about this stuff, and their opinion fails to solve anything. That is your problem. You tell me the diagnosis, and I'll tell you how to fix your problem. Right now, that's your problem. You can't tell me the diagnosis of what your problem is because the mental health professionals are the worst imaginable, they are awful, and they won't diagnose the child abuse that is occurring in your family. Here is the situation represented visually. Everyone else in healthcare gets diagnosis and treatment. If you want a diagnosis for ADHD, you go get it assessed. Autism, they'll assess for diagnosis of autism, depression, anxiety disorders, eating disorders, substance abuse. Everyone else gets diagnosis and treatment except you. In the family courts, you get a special psychological service called a forensic custody evaluation. That is nothing more than financial exploitation, There's no diagnosis, there's no solution, and there's destroyed lives. That's your problem. Okay. So when you send me and say, what do I do to fix my problem? How do I fix what do I do about my child and stuff? You're not recognizing what the problem is. The problem is your mental health people are not diagnosing the child abuse by the allied parent. That one parent in the email says, I believe my ex has a major psychiatric problem that's being passed on to the child. You're right. That's exactly right. Your ex-spouse has a major psychiatric disorder called a persecutory delusion. It's coming from their unresolved trauma that distorts their thinking and perception into thinking that there's dangers where none exist. Plus, they're kind of dark, narcissistic, borderline personality, and there's a lot of spousal abuse of you in the situation, using the child as a weapon. And oh my gosh, are they manipulative? And they're just toying the legal system and then lawyers and GALs and stuff, and like a little puppeteer. They're manipulating the situation to abuse you as their ex-spouse, because you had the temerity of rejecting them and divorcing them. So now you're going to suffer, and you're using the child as a spousal abuse weapon. So the mental health professional just needs to diagnose that and say it's a delusional disorder in the allied parent being passed on to the child, and that's psychological child abuse. Boom, we have the problem fixed within 6 to 12 weeks. Dorsey Pruder with the high road can fix it in 4 days. 4 days. We can fix this in days if we get the diagnosis and the separation. My psychology stuff will take 6 to 12 weeks. And, we can put this on afterwards and stabilize the family out. And it's all fixable. You don't have to go through years of custody conflict and spending tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars in trials and legal. You don't have to do that. None of that is necessary. Just go out and get a diagnosis, take 4 to 6 weeks, get a diagnosis of the child abuse and the delusional thought disorder, and boom, we fix it. So go ahead and do that. You can't, because they are withholding. The mental health people in the family courts are withholding the diagnosis from you so they can do these custody evaluations and make a lot more money off of you and not fix anything. Oh my gosh, it's so bad. Okay. So, just to summarize here, you have a problem. You want to fix your problem. To fix your problem, you will need to identify what that problem is. To fix your problem, you will need a diagnosis of what that problem is. I have videos up. I tell you what the diagnosis is. I tell everybody how to assess for it. I give them little checklists they can follow along to make the diagnosis. But they don't want to. They don't do it. They refuse. They are colluding with the child abuse. They are covering up the child abuse. The mental health people are. They're covering up the spousal abuse of you in order for them to make lots of money. That's your problem. So, as far as I see, the way to solve it is to get your legislators. That Blue Ribbon Commission came out of the state legislature. Licensing boards are inert. They're not protecting you. They're supposed to protect you, your licensing boards, from these psychologists. They're supposed to require competence. They're supposed to require professional standards of practice, like duty to protect, like not colluding with the child abuse, like diagnosing the child abuse when it's present. That's what the licensing boards are supposed to be doing, getting you competent mental health services and protecting you, the consumer. But they're not, because they're captured by the forensic psychologists who are doing this. So they just exempt themselves from any ethical standards. They exempt themselves from review. And so your licensing boards are inert. So get your state legislature. Why isn't the licensing board requiring competence in the mental health people? We've known this for 4 years. Why are the licensing boards allowing dangerous practices that are harmful to children produce defective reports with potentially disastrous consequences. Why are the licensing boards allowing that be done to you by the psychologists? Right? So that's one. But then their state legislators are all caught up in stuff, and they don't recognize the scope of the issues and the problems. So I guess it goes to the next phase, which is a class action lawsuit. You're a class of people that gets special treatment and special review from the licensing boards, and you get a special type of experimental psychological approach without IRB review or approval, without risk benefit analysis, without protections for a vulnerable population. You're a class of people, the parents and children in the family courts, who get singled out for special services. And those special services collude with the child abuse, fail to diagnose the child abuse, fail to diagnose the spousal abuse, refuse to diagnose it, and are ignorant, incompetent, unethical, violations to multiple ethical standards, and causes substantial harm. I've got a blog up that talked when I went down with all the AI, four different AI, and asked each one of them what the extent of the problem is over the last 40 years of forensic custody evaluations. And what the AI estimates in the United States, that the forensic custody evaluation industry over the last 40 years that it's been active has resulted in anywhere from 300,000 to 1.5 million undiagnosed child abuse cases in the United States in the last 40 years. 300,000 child abuse cases go undiagnosed, up to 1.5 million, and they're still coming in. They're still coming in. More undiagnosed. You see my emails. We still have, I would say, all three of those are likely child abuse that needs to be diagnosed and assessed and really quickly. And yet you hear them. The emails are saying, I've been doing this for years. Stunning. We have undiagnosed child abuse, and the mental health people are just doing nothing about it. They're just sitting on their hands, exploiting money. They're taking your money. The mental health people are more than happy to take your money, but they're not diagnosing or fixing the problem. They're not protecting you. They're not protecting the children. Okay. And you can do this with your own AI. You just get your AI and ask it, here's how you identify the scope of the problem. You say, how many divorces every year come into the family courts, enter the family courts every year with children? Then you say, how many of those result in high conflict situations? Then you say, how many of those high conflict situations involve a child rejecting a parent? There's your number every year. That number is coming in, and it'll vary a little bit based on what estimates the AI uses. But the AI estimates somewhere between 10,000 in the United States, 10,000 children or cases a year, to up to 40,000. So somewhere in that range of 10 to 40,000 cases a year in this range. And then if you say 2 children, you can double that. So it's 20 to 80,000 children coming in. And that's the United States. It's all over the world. So I just talked with a parent in Australia yesterday. She said, okay, what can you do to help me? And I said, well, you need a diagnosis. And you can't get a diagnosis in Australia. You can't get a diagnosis in England. You can't get a diagnosis in Scandinavia. They refuse. The mental health system just won't do it. But I'm focused in the United States. We need to get our United States. The moment the United States starts doing the right thing and protecting children from child abuse, then Canada will follow immediately. And once Canada goes and England falls and Australia falls and Scandinavia begins to do the right thing, and we get this solved everywhere for all children, the moment we identify and stop the institutional betrayal that's going on and get the institutions to start protecting children from child abuse and their parents from spousal abuse. But as long as the institutions will not protect children from child abuse, there will be child abuse, and it will destroy your children's lives, and it will destroy your life. That's a fact. If we don't protect children from child abuse, there will be child abuse. So with that, I'm going to get on with the rest of my day. Dr. Childress, help me? Sure. Tell me your diagnosis, and I'll tell you how to fix it.